transportation matters with a view of environmental sustainability. I'd like to acknowledge that I'd like to give thanks and acknowledge that the lands on which we work and learn are the shared traditional territories of the Qualicum and the Sonawas First Nations people. And moving right into our agenda, there's no presentations, but project updates. Phil Monroe, Director of Operations.
Yep. Good morning, everyone, again. And I think I'll start off with the False Bay new school seismic upgrade. We've got a design of that building that was shared with the senior leadership team about a week ago, and the architects came over from the mainland. We shared it with the senior leadership team and also some of the staff over from False Bay. Took some questions and some feedback on that front, and then we're going back over again this Friday to now share it with the community. And pleasantly, what's going to be nice when we go over there is almost all of their requests have been factored into the design of the building. I'm sure there'll be some tweaking that they'll come up with that they might look at and want, and we'll take that away. But this is moving along. Community consultation again this Friday. And we will then move along to the next phase of the design of the school. Super excited about it. After we've done the community consultation this Friday, I'll bring it back to the Fin and Ops to share it at that point. But I just didn't think it would be right to share it today without having first shared it with the community. So moving along on that front, that one's going along really, really well. We have the childcare build at Qualicum Beach Elementary. That one is going out to tender very quickly here and getting all the sub trades locked in here. So Napit Construction, as I've mentioned prior, is the construction management firm that we're using on the childcare build. Just to circle back, and I think I shared this at the last meeting, for the False Bay project, we have Heather Bray who won the tender on the False Bay. So Heather Bray is our construction management firm for the False Bay build, and they've done a lot of our washroom and change room upgrades in recent time and have experience in this space. So they're the construction management firm for False Bay. Napit Construction is the childcare, and like I said, an aggressive timeline here to start construction hopefully within about 6 weeks here at the childcare facility. They are the two big capital projects. The one thing I would mention also on the False Bay project that I get a lot of enjoyment out of watching is Heather Bray have really embraced, as we'd set out in the RFP when we went out to tender for a construction management firm, they've really embraced the local sourcing on the island, and they ran like a job fair over there to see which services, which trades, which materials they could use from the island. And there's a range of different heavy duty equipment and skill set over there that Heather Bray are going to tap into and leverage. Equally, the architects, myself and Ian Hesselgrave, who's working with us as a consultant, we met with Chief Rikama a week or so ago and Katie Marin just to talk about what are the right things to do before we turn soil over there. And so when we go over on Friday, Chief Rikama's put us in touch with someone that's a resident on the island that specializes in artifacts and doing examination of a site before construction. So we're working with local resources over there to make sure we delicately manage that relationship and make sure that we do everything we're supposed to do from a First Nations point of view before we start construction. I'll pause there and take any questions.
We've got a question, Trustee Young.
Yeah, just from when I was looking carefully at Liskiti and how that island was used by Indigenous people, I think it's shared territory with some Indigenous nations around the Powell River area as well. So Barry, you might know more about, I can't remember which nations they are, but we might want to reach out to them as well. And I really appreciate that we're doing this. It's the right thing to do. So thank you very much, Phil.
Yeah, no problem. In regards to from the feedback we've got from Chief Ricama on this, is the waterway between here and Laskidi was the highway that connected a lot of different tribes up and down that area, and he's pointed us in the direction of 4 bands were sharing that area. That was Comox, Qualicum, Snanawas, and Nanaimo, and so he's going to help us work through that and be our sort of relationship conduit to the other bands. But first and foremost, we just want to make sure we're making sure that the area where the new school is going to go has been assessed.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you very
Cool.
much. Trustee Kurland. Trustee
mute.
Kurland, you're on mute.
The Slimon people from Powell River were also involved in living on the Skeety, and they from what I understand, they used it as a summer residence rather than permanent. There wasn't a permanent village there. They came there to harvest salmon and dig clams, all those different people. And I think there's a woman who was a Simon Fraser professor. I think she's the one that was the um, person who would be, know the most about the artifacts. So I was also wondering what did the tender come out at in terms of dollars? Do you know, Phil? For the rebuild?
For which portion, the construction manager or the architectural? They're the 2 RFPs that we.
Well, just the whole rebuild of the school. I'm just
9
curious.
million. 9 million.
Yeah,
basically.
9
9
million.
million?
That's our envelope, but we're now we haven't gone out to tender for all the building supplies yet. So we've locked in an architect, we've locked in a construction management firm, and then now we're starting to shape the design there, and we've got consultants working on mechanical, electrical engineering, and all those components. Once we get those designs, it'll then go out to tender to all the sub trades, concreters, carpentry, all those things, and then that's when the price will start to firm up. But
Right.
but Eve's correct.
So just
$9
as
million.
a matter of interest, the bill for building Oceanside, which was considered the flagship school at the time, was $10 million.
Yeah.
Just to show you what inflation has done.
Well, inflation and the Laskidi cost, right? Like, let's not lose fact
Yeah.
that a lot of the envelope that we've been given by the ministry built in a lot of risk associated with doing such a
Yeah.
challenging build.
Yeah, just a point of information. All of that material is on the second page I think it's the second page of this agenda. So it's down under the major projects.
Yeah. Jason.
See if I'm unmuted here. Can you hear me?
Are you fishing again?
Oh, no, doing yard work. This is probably a question that's way too late to ask, specifically about the daycare building in Qualicum Beach, and where the building is situated, specifically away from the corner of the field, but to leave a little notch behind it in the field. I'm just curious, maybe at least, Phil, you could let me know why that they didn't push the building into the corner and maybe give it a little bit more space for parking for the facility or something, because it seems like it's going to be very crowded in there for drop off and buckle ups of babies and car seats and all that kind of stuff. Why did they leave that little notch behind instead of, is that still the plan?
Yeah, you're correct. It is still the plan. The little notch there at the back, we will find some way to utilize that, either with a little pump track or some other kind of playing area for kiddos. I asked that same question of whether we should push it back. It was an accessibility thing. Parking was never going to be an option to put in there. It would become cost prohibitive. We've got to find.
Not on the back side, but if they push the building to the back corner, there'd be more parking on the front side, right? So, but anyway.
Yeah, but if we push the building to the back to then excavate and put new asphalt down and all those sorts of things becomes quite costly. And from a traffic flow point of view, might help with some parking stalls, but it would right now, the way that it's designed is we'll have a loop going in there with another entry exit point with a one-way in and a one-way out, which will actually further enhance that parking situation that's there at the moment.
I think it might enhance flow, but not available spaces, considering the increased amount of staff and the need of parents to be not just quickly drop off like an elementary student. They need to get out, leave their vehicle, sign in a child, and then get back into their vehicle.
Yeah. Just one thing I would mention with that is the existing basketball court area there that's behind, that's not actually utilized at the moment, is going to add parking stalls to the current parking stations, and there is going to be a few spots right out the front of the childcare. The architects have carefully thought out how we can maximize the parking situation to meet. We put a building like that on there, we have to increase parking. So parking is increasing, but we're doing it without having to spend money on excavating and putting new asphalt down. We're reusing the existing asphalt.
Okay, well, thank you for the information. I would not say that the basketball court is not utilized. It is utilized. It's just not utilized in that way at this time. Anyway.
No, and sorry, just so we're on the same page here, it's not to say that we would take the basketball court away and not use another. We offered to put down another concrete slab on the other side of the school, and the school is telling us that that's not, that they'd rather the money be used in other areas. So there's already a basketball court, and we're open to creating more play areas in other areas around the school, like the backside of the school near where the gym is, and we're working with the school administrators on that. So it's not to take away facilities from the kids. We're happy to replace them, but from a cost effectiveness, utilizing that part, that it's not even a basketball court really, it's a piece of asphalt. It's not the actual basketball court, it's just a piece of asphalt with 3 basketball hoops on it that are still set to middle school heights. They're not even at elementary heights. And so we will be working with the school to make sure we leave it with as many activities for kids to do, or enhancing and increasing more. But that's the direction on the parking stalls out the front of the childcare.
Thank you.
Great.
No problem.
Thank you, Phil. Is there anything else?
I do have one more that I just want to quickly just throw out here. And I'm just going to quickly share my screen. And I believe I've mentioned it before, but I do just want to just talk about it, because some drawings are going to firm up and those sorts of things in the coming weeks. So I've been working with the Whalers Football Association, and they basically I'm just going to keep it on this one. So they're basically utilizing Winchelsea Learning Centre right now for their equipment. They have some shipping containers, so on and so forth. We've been using a lot of the engineers that the school district uses currently for our projects, our architect. They've all donated their time pro bono to help the Whalers design and create a football field house at the track facility. And it would be kind of in the area where the old DRC used to be, up on that area there. This is the sketch design. There's some 3D drawings getting developed right now. And that's kind of what it would look like. Actually, it's only one level, so it's changed a little bit. It's one level at the moment. A lot of the services that we use, Cause Engineering, they've all donated their time pro bono. And the Whalers are going to be going along and doing a fundraising effort to try and get some of their alumni and some of the businesses to fund the build. And they're going to be rattling the tin for about $200,000. They've got $500,000 approximately in time and materials donated. The whole build is likely around the $700,000 mark. When we went and issued the drawings for some building permits, the design cost charges and the building permits from the City of Parksville came in at $40,000. And so I reached out to the City of Parksville and said that, hey, all these architects and engineers have donated their time. Is there anything we can do to get the fees waived? And I linked the Whalers up with them. And some of the City of Parksville staff are working through that right now to see if they can help the whalers out on that front. And then lastly on this, the Whalers Association will be going to Check News because they have some contacts at Check News, and then doing an article to actually drive up some of their fundraising here in the coming month. All good things, and just wanted to put that out there so everyone, when they see it on Check News, and they understand a little bit around what's happening there.
Yeah, I'll just chime in here before I go to questions, but they are phenomenal fundraisers, those guys. They can get money out of a rock. They're quite incredible. So I wish them well. Trustee Young.
Yeah, just to be really clear, the Whalers is not a school club.
No.
It is
No.
a separate club, a
Yeah.
separate group.
Yep.
And so I just want to make sure that we don't kind of get our lines mixed on this. But yes,
Yeah.
you're right, Carol. They'll go out and get the money.
Yeah, they're
Yep.
fantastic.
Two things quickly on that. You're right. They're a society, and the only real affiliation with the school is the players have to be at the Bolinas High School to play in the competition that they play in. But they have expressed to me that the economic climate and inflation and everything has made their fundraising that much harder at the moment. But they are very good at it. And so I'm working with them, and that's some of why he wants to go to the president of the Whalers, Dan Smith, wants to do a fundraising campaign like with Check News, is because I think they're misunderstood. People don't understand that they are a fund-raised organization.
Yeah, that's great. Trustee Kurland.
Thanks for that, Elaine, that clarification. That's important. So I was just wondering, out of curiosity, Phil, what's the roof going to be on that building? Do you know?
I'm not sure if it's shingled or metal. I'm not sure yet, but that's going to be donated to by one of the local roofing companies.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Seeing no further questions, we're going to move on. There's no new items for discussion, so we'll move on to the agenda and we'll go information items. Replacement, we'll go A, replacement process for specialized equipment. How is it budgeted for and replaced? And this was a request by Matt of MATA. And I'm interested in how they do replacement stuff, how the funding comes through. So I will leave that to you, Secretary Treasurer Ron Amos.
Before we go there, I do have a couple of other questions that relate to capital projects. And I'm wondering if I should ask them now, Carol.
Or maybe you could ask
Are they
me
sure?
at the end.
Depends
We'll-
how much in depth you want to get, I guess.
Yes,
Okay, I can ask them at the end of the meeting.
yeah. Okay, Secretary Treasurer Amos.
Thank you. Yes, so this is actually dovetailing to the budget conversation also. So I've got a couple of slides that I'm going to show just to open the conversation. I think the ask, and again, not to say that I'm going I will answer the question because Matt, I think, who raised it with Carol, was regarding some of the shops, the gym equipment, the Comac, and that kind of thing. But I want to sort of broaden the discussion a little bit more in relation to other equipment and other planning that goes on. So quickly sharing here. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing the local capital projects?
Yeah.
Okay. So referencing back to the multi-year financial plan, I put in there sort of the local capital projects in terms of how we plan some of the things that are on the table right now. This is clearly showing what we spent the money on in the past. We've talked about bus routing software. We've talked about the white fleet replacement in the 22-23 year, contribution to the running track, as well as going forward, some other things that have been brought forward for discussion. We know that we need to readdress the white fleet equipment. And again, these are the, for those unfamiliar, this is the shop equipment, the the O&M vehicles that they use to go around the district because they're not funded any other way. But the yellow fleet, the buses are funded through a capital program, just as a reminder, but the white fleet is on the burden of the local districts. So it's something that we need to be aware of. We add it to our list. Likewise, the copier equipment, we talked about that when I was introducing this at the multi-year, and that this is the time for the planning of the replacement cycle of the copier equipment. Because we own them, we don't have an ongoing cost associated with them short of consumables. So when we do replace them, we have to make that bigger decision of do we cut a check for the fleet, as it were, over the period of 2 years and buy the equipment, or some districts go down the road of leasing. And so then you have an ongoing burden over time, no different than leasing a vehicle, leasing a car versus buying a car. And likewise, the IT tech refresh is just the consideration that over the course of time, we have to add value to our IT servers, to our IT inventory, whether it's laptops and that kind of nature. So over the course of time, this list builds, this adds. And so we've had some recent conversations in our senior leadership team as we consider the 26-27 budget requests, that this document needs to be refreshed. And it's all about us I won't say putting our cards, but getting for our different departments to ask the question of what are your needs going forward. We can't respond in the year that you need them, not if it's an ask for like $200,000 in the course of the existing year. So the better approach, obviously, is timing these according to the budget cycle. So again, this is really about starting that conversation on replacements and how things get some of the larger things, how they get funded, how they get supported. And that kind of leads to the present discussion in terms of how are things funded. So again, when you look at school equipment, we talk about phone systems. So the monthly usage tends to be charged to the local supply budget. So the schools pay for the phone bills. The school pays for the copier charges, the one-off copier charges, and for the consumables, the paper. But when it comes to the replacement of those things, they are a district, if you want, there's a district cost. And so again, we need to get those things into the life cycle replacement. So the fleet replacement of the copiers, as identified on that previous screen, we talk about putting it into the replacement cycle. Coming forward recently with recent conversations with O&M and IT is the systems for the telephone systems needing to be replaced. And so it needs to be added to the list of needs. The question, I think, was about gym equipment, shop equipment, foods equipment. And so again, foods might be fridges, stoves, those sorts of things. Shop could be woodworking equipment, or it could be metalworking equipment that occasionally needs to be replaced, refreshed. Gym equipment, obviously there's ongoing volleyball nets and volleyball equipment, basketball equipment, that kind of stuff. Generally speaking, those costs come from the schools themselves. They've got a supply budgets that fund an annual supply budget that funds their departments, their equipment replacements, those sorts of natures, and even just the copier costs come out of that local supply budgets. Likewise, when it comes to district departments, White Fleet, as I talked about, is a district burden. It's not something that they've got necessarily in their ongoing operating fund. So those tend to be purchased through the district through a refresh system. And again, we've been able to address it in 3 years ago or 2 years ago. And again, wanting to put it back on the table for a continuous. And some of these things, as we get our house in order a little bit more, we can keep them in a cycle of refreshment as opposed to always responding when there's the need arises. It would be better for us to plan the horizon out better rather than the one-off asks and just and so plan for it accordingly. Build up a reserve in the local capital fund through operating fund transfers. And I say that because many times we depend on the sale of land to augment our local capital. That doesn't always come. Okay, certainly we haven't had a lot of lands. We haven't had any land sales in the last 5 years, which is why we're asking for consideration in that area. But when you don't have land, you go back to the operating fund. And so the operating fund is what tends to fund this over time. And so I've spoken to it in the past in terms of how you budget for it is basically creating a contingency within the operating fund that says, okay, we're going to plan on moving $500,000 as a case in point within our operating fund annually and put it into the local capital. And then you build that and then spend it down as needed. So that's kind of where we need to get to. We sort of started teasing that out in the 25-26 budget. We talked about refreshing the White Fleet. We talked about capital replacement and that kind of nature. But again, it's really about us building and recognizing that we need to plan for it. Likewise, the last item on this list, of course, is the IT consumables. Tend to come out of their IT budget, so they do have money in their operating department funds for laptop replacement, for those sorts of things, the small items, small ticket items. But when it comes to a refresh, they don't have it, and so this is what we tend to do. We embed it in our budget as the time as we find it. And so I hopefully that answers the question of you, Matt. I'll open it up for a second. But I think that kind of addresses where some of these things, not only the school budgets are finding their equipment replacements, but also from the district's perspective. And sure.
Thank you. Okay, Trustee Kurland.
So, Ron, I was curious with the White Fleet, the budget looked like it was $100,000 per year that was coming up. So that's like, if you're going to buy a vehicle, that would be like two vans, right? Something like that.
Maybe 3.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Phil sort of purchased a couple in the last couple of years. I mean, it depends if you're buying new versus off of lease, and I think that's always a consideration that O&M looks at, reviewing the BC bids and those kind of things, or what comes up from some of the local manufacturers. They're always, whether or not 100 is enough, I don't know. It really is a placeholder for the needs that are arising out of O&M.
Yeah. So if you buy new ones and or even lease ones, don't you have to have them serviced by the people that sell them to you?
No, so if I can jump in there. What we do, you're quite right. The cost of vehicles has gone through the roof. That 100,000 would get us one brand new vehicle, or 2 secondhand if we really hunt and scrounge around. 40-45 gets us a secondhand vehicle with about 100,000 Ks on it. So that's what we typically do, and then our mechanics service them.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Ron.
Trustee Austin.
You could you speak a little bit about the sourcing of some of these things? You touched a little bit on the White Fleet and things like copiers. I'm wondering, in terms of the sourcing of these things, how does it work in terms of, like, if we were to work with other school districts that were also looking for more White Fleet vehicles or more copiers or things like that, is there a way to bring costs down just through volume of purchase if we work with other districts?
You know, certainly Focused Ed BC has is the I'm trying to think of where their mandate comes from, if they're coming from the government or if it's coming from education. Well, Focused Ed, clearly it's coming from education. So they do a lot of procurement planning on behalf of the school districts. And so oftentimes they will put out to tender, and I don't know if they still do, they put out to tender, give us your best price on copiers so that we can release it to the districts. And they would know that for government purchasing, for school district purchasing, we would be able to tap into their provincial RFP. I don't know if I think occasionally you see it, well, you do see it for their yellow fleet buses. the Transportation Association, they do an RFP prior to the ministry funding for buses kind of thing, and they line up, if you want, the suppliers on best prices. It's not a White Fleet, on the other hand, there isn't really a source for it, so you don't see a lot of districts accumulating a purchase. It really is up to the locals for many of these purchases. Likewise, IT, when it comes to laptops and devices, there is a procurement strategy under Focused Ed that Leslie taps into. But it is a bit of a piecemeal. The smaller districts are at a deficit because we don't buy the quantity necessarily that the large districts do. So there are some avenues that districts can tap into, but they're not always necessarily in the schedule or in the timing that we like. So the sourcing comes from different ways, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Thank you. Did that answer your question, Trustee Austin?
Well, yes, it does. Thank you very much, Ron. But I'm just wondering if larger districts have an advantage just because of their size. If, 3 or 4 smaller districts got together and said, yeah, we're all in need of, 2 or 3 White Fleet vehicles. We could create our own big district and make and kind of make our own deals that way. But I guess there's avenues to try and touch base with some of those districts.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest thing is for us locally is identifying the needs over the course of time. And then you can kind of look at it in terms of, okay, we've got a big White Fleet budget to be replaced in a year's time. Then you can sometimes plan accordingly and sort of respond to other districts that might be doing the same. Our timings may not always coincide, I guess is all I'm thinking. But the biggest thing that we can do is plan out in advance on the value that we're willing to place on some of these purchases so that we can find out if there's some other districts that are willing to partner with us.
Great. Thank you. Matt.
Thank you, Carol, and thanks for bringing this forward to this meeting. I want to pick up on something that Ron said, and he said plan accordingly. And I think it's imperative that we plan accordingly with some of these build specialized areas like shops and home ec and the PE department. So I greatly appreciate the time set aside for this, and I hope that in your consideration of future budgets that these become sort of capital line items. The one piece that I didn't think was talked about was maintenance. And so just like computers have their maintenance, there's usually yearly maintenance that goes along in the auto shop, in the metal shop. I know there's some maintenance with volleyball nets, and these things usually, you find some workarounds and you kind of Mickey Mouse things yourself as a former PE teacher. You do what you can to keep to keep things afloat. But there are some general maintenance pieces that should be looked at and should be considered. And the people that would give you the information for that would be the folks that work in those spaces. They'd be able to sit down with you, talk about the machines. I know that with Phil and Peter and Ryan, when we were walking through these shops, there was this kind of like baseline. What is a baseline? And of course, you always want the most for students. You want the best access for students to the pieces of equipment and that you can get. And so to do that, though, there needs to be a maintenance plan that's part of this. So please consider that as part of a capital budget. And I don't know what that cost is. And I don't even know what types of machinery and type of maintenance pieces that would be part of those. But it would be appreciated that that discussion happens and that there is that planned schedule to plan accordingly for that. Like everything, if you maintain your car and do your oil changes, then you don't have to pay higher fees. And I think that's what happens sometimes with some equipment that's in these areas is that they don't get maintained well enough, so that then they break and so forth. I do believe the district's been doing a good job to rectify that, but it'd be nice to see that it sits in a budget like this, capital type budget, moving forward. And the final thing is the supply budget that schools receive, and I guess I'll speak more from elementary. Those supply budgets are, stretched as thinner than the word thin. They oftentimes, well, I can tell you my experience at Springwood was I created the clothing wear, the swag that Springwood currently has, and for many years the selling of that paid for my gym classes, my IT classes, and so forth. And so then got to the point that DPAC or PACA took it over. So that was something that was not the only way my PE program could grow. And the consumables in PE are, I guess, a ball that goes outside is $60, $70. That's one ball, and it gets left outside in the rain. And I mean, the consumables in PE it's an unbelievable amount of money. And that is something that should be considered as well moving forward. And that it's to the point, I believe, that it's too costly to expect schools to find that within their budgets, unless their budgets are increased. So that's my experience in terms of the supply budgets. So yeah, so again, thank you for bringing this forward, and I appreciate the conversations around this.
You're welcome. Trustee Young.
Yeah, I think we have to be very careful. There's accounting pieces in terms of what's capital and what's consumable. And Mr. Amos, I'll let you speak to that if you want to, but you can't just say, oh, okay, this becomes capital. So I think where trustees need to be really involved in this is, as we do our budget process, ensuring that those supply budgets, to Mr. Wood's comment, that we don't limit them too much, and that we somehow look into the future and say, okay, we are gonna ensure that these supply budgets remain in place, and possibly we adjust them to inflation every year, so that then the schools can make some really good plans through their staff committees around how these supply budgets are spent. That's I think, from my perspective, that looks like the process at this point.
Thank you. Phil. Phil.
Yeah, thanks. One thing I would just say, and it would be remiss of me not to say, because it's been an ongoing work for us in O&M, is to just define what is it that is our responsibility to maintain from an asset point of view, and what is not. And so we see good things come into the system with the best intentions that come from the local building or the PACs, and then where does that lie from a maintenance perspective? And we're constantly trying to define that, so we've all got clear lines of roles and expectations here. And then it is about right-sizing the district to make sure we're not maintaining things that we don't need to maintain. And I'm going to talk about the wood machinery in the old middle schools, which are now elementary schools, and we've slowly started taking that stuff out. We have old cooking labs in the old middle schools with stoves that are gas that we maintain. Do we need to maintain them? There's kitchen labs in these now elementary schools. And so that's been the work of us over the last sort of year and a half, to make sure we're maintaining the things that we need to maintain and focusing on them, and not maintaining things that aren't part of the curriculum or are just legacy things in the system that we need to clean up a little bit, and making sure that we're on the same page. And we work with the school administrators to make sure that they're maintaining the things that they've acquired. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I think these are all good things for trustees to be aware of. Matt, I never really gave too much thought to this particular subject. And yeah, it's interesting for those schools that have facilities that they don't use or they're not intended to use, what happens to that equipment. Dr. Jory.
Yeah, it's great to have this conversation and bring all these ideas forward. I appreciate this. And many of the things that have been said, I think are absolutely spot on. We do have to go through a process where we decide what is and what isn't critical to the operation of the school district. I heard the word baseline, and that's a good word. There's a level of service out there I think we owe the students, and we need to honor that. At times, though, I believe, because of interest or whatever, or opportunity, and sometimes, you get a chance to get some piece of equipment and you want to capitalize on that, not recognizing that that's maybe going to be a temporary lift to service and that it's going to create a challenge later on. We used to call these things puppies, right? Everybody wants the puppy. Nobody wants to walk the puppy, feed the puppy, clean up after the puppy, right? You've got to be careful about bringing assets in that are going to create a burden later on if you're not going to commit or you don't have a plan to maintain it. In regard to our long-standing capital costs across the district, we want to get to a stage here where we are proactive around all those and anticipating all of those. What I'm finding here is that every time there's a new cost, we're kind of surprised by it, alarmed by it. Like, oh no, photocopiers, there's a couple $100,000. Oh no, phones, and the list goes on, and the list will continue to go on. And what we should be doing is, to Ron's point, putting those in a holding spot and planning to actually do these in anticipation of their arrival each and every time. My hope for the school district, and you've heard me talk about this a lot, and I'm not going to be shy about it, if we sell this property over here, we can invest that money and create a legacy fund that will allow us to map out these capital costs over time and make sure that we are planned for our white fleet, planned for our laptop replacement, planned for our switches, and that we can build that in and then take a portion of that and also say, yeah, now we're going to upgrade these classrooms, those washrooms, and do that in addition to the AFT, which runs pretty thin a lot of the time. In regard to supplies, let's all remember that in a tough budget year last year, we put $200,000 against supplies. To everybody's point, yeah, we hadn't kept up with inflation. It was a place where I think we were impoverished, and it was putting pressure on our schools. It was putting pressure on our parents. And so we put $200,000 back out there. 160 of that went to schools. So our elementary schools are $15,000 better off than they were the year before. Our high schools are $25,000 better off than they were the year before. And so that gives them the flexibility to do more field trips, to buy more equipment and do those things through their processes at their school. There's also a portion of that, $40,000, that was held back for a central fund, which we're going to activate very shortly around chairs and tables and such. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about shop equipment in there, or whether that's a separate conversation, but I'm certainly open to that being included if that's the will of our principal group. So we're in better shape than we were a year before, despite all the other constraints that we've been facing. We made that commitment as a district, and don't forget that you did that, board, because I think that's incredibly important. And my hope is that we will keep up with those costs, that we won't go another 10 years of inflation before we wake up and go, oh yeah, we got to do this again, that we can, add on from time to time as need be. Thanks.
Thank you. Secretary Treasurer Amos.
Yes, and just pick up where a comment of Peter's was, once we have the funds, once we start setting up and a plan for establishing X amount of dollars from our operating fund, again, recognizing there might be some land sales that can augment a local capital fund, but once you start embedding it in your budget to transfer some money, you're now allowing yourself to prioritize, even in a given year, should something come up that we didn't consider in the planning of it. So say one of the things that cybersecurity came out of last year's discussion. And so we were kind of left cobbling together some funding for it in the given year to support this. When you actually have a local capital that's committed with dollars being funneled into it over the course of a life cycle, you can change directions when an immediacy comes up. And I know we've got policy around contingency funds within our surplus to mitigate some of these one-offs, to mitigate these risks that are inherent in the business that we have, that what if something were to happen. But a healthy local capital will also help you do that. That if you do need something for a wonder, then you can shift your planning a little bit and maybe refresh it in the given year, as opposed to waiting for year 7 or wait year 6 when it might have been already prioritized. So it does give you flexibility. And again, this is really comes down to anybody with a bank account, the flexibility that comes with having some money in reserve and planning to put some savings away for those given rainy day funds.
Just want to point out that Julie's cat's made an appearance and now we finally have quorum.
Great. Is that it, Ron? Okay. Mr. Woods.
Thanks. I just didn't want this to get lost either. When we were at Bolinas and we were in that shop area, there was a considerable sized classroom that was confusing as to how it was being utilized. And so there was some discussions about possibly a redesign of that area. And so I just didn't want that to get lost. I know that Phil heard that, and I think we've all heard that, but I thought everybody here should hear that, moving forward, at some point, that there should be a discussion about that space with people that are in that space, and people like Phil that are responsible, and Mike for supporting that space. And then the cost items of doing something. So I just didn't want that to be lost as well in terms of this conversation, because that was something that did come out of our tour of the specialized places. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Kurland. You are muted.
That's better. So if we, Ron, if we sold an asset and invested the money, do we have to pay tax on the investment, the profit for this? Say we invested 4% or 2.5%. Do we have to pay tax on that money?
No, we definitely do not have to pay tax. We are a public education. We are a charitable organization when it comes to certain things, but we don't pay tax effectively.
Great. I love that. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. That was a really good conversation. I see no more hands, so we're going to move on to B, 2026-2027 budget development, budget process scheduling, survey, and review.
Thank you. So yes, so segueing into budget, as absolutely budgeting, as if you remember my spiral, as it were, budgeting continues. So today's conversation is actually a good introduction to the budgeting focus that we're going to look at come February through June, effectively. So the schedule is in front of you. Again, it's a fairly standard schedule. February is when we're in January, February, starting to look at projections, projected enrollment, staffing needs based on that. And then we bring the discussion to our stakeholders in February, knowing that we don't know the revenue side of things until March, mid-March. And then we wrap up our budgeting in April, May, and June, potentially. We'll send out a survey, and the survey itself is similar to last year's, but again, I will share it out at the time. But again, what it does is it speaks to give us your feedback on these certain areas of inquiry. How are we doing? How do you feel things are? Sorry, let's actually read the question. What do you feel is going well related to? And what concerns to consider related to? And so some of the areas of inquiry that we talk about are student learning, learning resources, conversation we just had, facilities and transportation, parent and community partnerships and truth and reconciliation, and then what else do we need to consider? So that's the theme that we ask with our stakeholders. And again, recognizing that we've had in the past about 120 responses, majority of them being generally parents who can't necessarily make some of the public meetings. But it is a good opportunity for even staff and community, non-invested partners in the community that might want to weigh in on some of those questions. So it is a good opportunity. It'll go out in February. It tends to be open for 3 months throughout the budget process. But again, the cycle is generally the same as it's in the past. Last year, we made space for the IEC, the Indigenous Ed Council. And so we're making space once again in this schedule, in the 26-27 schedule, so that we can hear from them directly in terms of our budget plans and their thoughts. Generally speaking, though, the budget process is going to be very similar to last year. But again, open to hear from the board if there's any difference that they want to investigate or look into.
Great. Thank you so much, Ron. Jason.
So I was trying to make a comment a couple minutes ago and disconnected myself. If it's possible to backtrack for half a second, with the selling of land. Sorry,
We're not able to hear you.
We're losing you,
You're
Jason.
having technical issues.
Hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. If backtracking, if you're selling land to create a fund that generates future income, and say the Parksville Commons are on that, I don't know if that's is to be sold or could still be sold, or maybe, or for sure, I don't know how that works. But
What's
does
the question?
100% of that, does 100% of that sale go to that investment fund, or is the school district planning to withhold or use some in the short term?
So the sale of the property, sorry, the proceeds of the sale of the property will always go to the local district, regardless of, it doesn't go back to the government. That's often a sort of a wonder by people. So the money will stay in the school accounts or the district accounts, but it gets parceled between local capital that I just spoke to and restricted capital. When it's restricted, the ministry we have to ask permission to spend it. When it's local capital, the board has the authority to spend it. So of the spending of either proceed, like, so if and when we do sell properties, it's up to the board how that money gets spent, clearly, whether it's restricted or capital. They're the ones that ask the question of, let's proceed with spending it in this manner. And I make that point because if the fund that we've talked about is large enough, then you can actually establish an interest portion that would be funding these things if you're getting enough investment revenue to generate it. And so, but oftentimes, if it's a small local capital amount, if you're not refreshing it, it will get spent over time, which is where we're at today. So it really is, the better you understand the needs over time, you can plan on how best to either invest the money, if there's enough to make an investment and live off the interest kind of thing. But again, it all starts with the development of a plan and then proceeding with how do we generate enough funds to support that plan, whether it's through the capital itself or through the investment revenues that are being generated by the capital. If that helps.
So you're saying then it's the decision of the trustees what percentage of the proceeds of these sales will be potentially invested as opposed to used in the short term.
That can
And
be
do we
a
have
question.
is there a current intention amongst the trustees?
No.
No.
Wait until you see the money. There's
Until you
no
have the money.
discussion. But again, part of the discussion really is, if we had the funds, this is what we need it for. And so, like I said, forgetting the generation of funds through sales, districts always have the opportunity to generate the funding necessary for capital needs through operating surpluses that get transferred at the end of the year or beginning of the year through a budget discussion, through a motion. So whether you got lands to sell or you just have these needs, the planning is the first thing, and then how do you create the funds to pay for them comes second. And so if we didn't have land sales, we would be cycling the money out of operating fund, which is the natural course for most districts that don't have the lands.
Big
We
sales.
have,
My
we have
follow-up question is,
we
do we have
have
a
both
finite
at our
amount of
disposal
land?
at this point. We've got the land question, and we also have obviously the budget cycle that allows us to potentially earmark some funds for these capital needs as they have been highlighted for the board.
We're fortunate to have some lands in question. I know there's concerns from the DPAC about the sale of these properties. It might be, if you were able to say that it's going to be set aside as a legacy and not spent immediately, and we're investing in our children's future, you might have a little more success in buy-in.
Dr. Jory, you had your hand up quickly there. Did you want to say something in regards to this?
Well, Mr. Amos covered it, and so I did take my hand down. But just on that last point that Mr. Howard made, yeah, these are ideas at this point. This is staff sharing information and creating what I think is a little bit of blue sky for people to look towards, and ultimately a whole bunch of things have to happen, including the sale of the property before the board is ultimately going to approve one plan or another. But we certainly take your point.
Thank you. Okay, so moving back to what we were discussing, Trustee Young, you have your hand up.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. First of all, to Jason's comments, I'm sure we're going to talk about this through the budget cycle. The property that we have sold and will be transferred in February is the French Creek property. So that sale is almost done. So then we talk about, okay, how do we want to spend the money? How do we want to save the money? Whatever. The whole process of looking at these properties has continued over approximately 6 years now. And quite frankly, I think we've talked this over a lot of times. And I just hope that at some point we can come to a consensus on this. Absolutely. We're still in process here. If in the possibility that the Qualicum Commons and the Craig Street Commons, we know that they're not needed. If somebody were to buy us out of those properties, then we would have a very large legacy fund. But as Superintendent Jory said, it's blue sky thinking right now. The one that we need to focus on is what are we going to do with that French Creek amount? To this budget document, I just want to point out that we have a very transparent process here. I always think about the February piece as, well, if we had the money, what would we spend it on, right? And then the bigger discussion is like, okay, so we don't have the money because the funding announcement just came out. How are we going to look at this? So what I would really like the trustees to think about is a values-based discussion when we come to senior management and trustees. Like what are our shared values around spending our budget? And then we could give that information as a part of the discussion. I think that would really tend to focus us a bit. The other thing is I noticed that the Indigenous Education Council is involved in the first part of the process, but I don't see them after the funding amount. So is our intention then that they become a part of the public process in the public budgeting meeting on May 19th, or where are we
Yes.
going with that?
Ron
Yeah?
gave you a thumbs up. Yes.
Yes.
The-
Okay.
We still need to reach out to Katie and company to find the dates, but yes, that's the intention.
Thank you.
Trustee Austin.
Okay, thanks. And thanks, Jason, for your comments, because I think basically you were continuing on at our last regular board meeting. The Marina, on behalf of DPAC, made her presentation. And at that time, she said that DPAC was deeply concerned about the potential impact of the sale of Craig Street Commons. She was asking for more transparency of enrollment projections and what happens if we need that school site. So, as Elaine alluded to, a lot of this information has come out over time, and it continually is being updated. Example, the enrollment projections. So I understand. I think it's challenging for people to access that information directly because they basically have to go back and find the minutes of a particular FinOps meeting or something like that. It is really challenging to find just the information you're looking for because it's there. It's in our minutes of our meetings, but it's really quite hard to find. So maybe my suggestion, Jason, would be to ask DPAC to maybe write down all the questions they have. I suspect the answers to a number of them might be readily available. Like I imagine Ron could just pluck them out and go, yep, here's these, and these. But I would be interested to know things like what does it mean when you're looking for more transparency of enrollment projections? If those kind of things could be written down, like what does that look like for DPAC? What does that transparency look like? And then hopefully we could accommodate that. Because I think they're good questions and I think they wrap around budget discussions really, really well. But I think it would be great if you could write them down, clarify it so that we know what it is exactly that you're looking for. And then hopefully we can chase down the answers. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I will take that to Marina and Deepak. But also, it is, as you say, challenging for us probably having a lot of turnover in District PAC and having new people perhaps every year or every second year to understand that there is even something to look at 6 years ago, that this was an issue 6 years ago and it has been talked about for 6 years. We don't even know that that's there to go and look up, let alone where to find it. So I appreciate your patience in some of these questions while we get up to speed.
For sure. Okay. So Trustee Young, I'm going to let you ask your questions here on capital projects that you had.
Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, I was wondering, and I think Mr. Monroe can answer both of these, maybe Superintendent Jory as well. The all sports court at KSS, these are both KSS related questions. Where are we at with that? And I'm thinking in terms of, I'm going to a Qualicum Council meeting soon, and I could certainly have some informal dialogue. So where are we at with that one, Phil?
Yeah, so I'm meeting with Principal Andrew Lee on Thursday this week. Sorry, actually tomorrow afternoon I'm meeting with Andrew and we're going to be going over a cost table of what a projected cost would look like and then come up with some realistic timelines. Someone from the town of Qualicum reached out to him recently, Luke Sales, in regards to that, and then so we'll chat about that, and then I'll bring it back here. But it would likely straddle 2 years, so it might be like spring of 2027 as an example, where it straddles a couple of AFG years, so we can, as Superintendent Jory mentioned, we've got a finite amount of money. a basketball court would dent our capital dollars by a lot. So can we sort of run it in springtime and do it over a couple of capital years? So that's my thinking.
Okay, that's good. Now, I know that Qualicum Council has set aside some money for that project, so I can't remember how much it is offhand, but I can certainly find out.
Set
The other,
aside. I don't think they
Pardon?
set it, I don't think they set it aside. They've talked
They-
about it.
no, they
I-
have by resolution, Eve.
Yeah?
Because, yeah, and I can check on that.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other question that I have, and I know we've talked about this before, is the new washrooms. I guess I was kind of surprised when I went in the first time to KSS to use the washroom. I went into the wrong one because I didn't realize, I guess it hadn't kind of gotten to me that they're still gendered there. And I wonder, are the ones at Bolinas also gendered, or how did that come about? And I know we've talked about this before, but I can't remember how that came about.
Yep. So they were both designed to be not gender specific. And first, I'll preface this conversation just by saying I'm super happy with how these two projects turned out. These new washrooms and the safe spaces that they've provided for the kids. And I'm going to a student leadership group meeting tomorrow to circle back with the student leaders at Bolinas on this, because the uptick in utilization has been outstanding, and the vandalizing of these facilities has come way down. So really happy with them. They're both designed to be universal washrooms, and when we presented this at both student leadership groups, Bolinas is designed and utilized as intended. KSS, some of the students had some feedback, and some of it was actually quite valid, is that their washrooms are right in an area that's where some seating is and people sit across from there. So we designed it with some frosted glass windows so that when you're washing your hands, you're not being stared at by someone eating their lunch. So we put all those sorts of things in. We only installed one wheelchair accessible washroom, and that is a universal non-gendered specific washroom, and that is at the back side on the right hand side in the back corner, because we never know what gender someone could be in a wheelchair at the school. So that ticks that box off on a code point of view. Then on each door stall, we've put male specific gendered cubicles on the right hand side, girls or female on the left, with the anticipation of hopefully being able to take them down at some point in the future. And to just sort of raise some awareness with this, the signage was delayed in coming when the washrooms had opened, and all the students were using them as universal washrooms. And once we put the gendered signs up, the students actually complained, a big cohort of the students at KSS complained that we'd put gender specific signage up. So we've got a blended approach. We've got really gender specific washrooms in the gymnasium and in the front building. This one is gender specific on the cubicles, but the hand basins can be used. You can go to either side. That's a common area, but we've made it gender specific at this stage. So it's a kind of meet in the middle from some concerns from the KSS leadership group. And I'm going to work with Andrew Lee there, the principal, and circle back with the student leadership group there as well.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they weren't gender specific, given
Okay,
what
I'd like to move on from this.
I would just like to say thank you that given the information from the education committee the other day, I think we need to move beyond gendered washrooms.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna move on, and an item for recommendation to the board, statement of financial information, and this is Assistant Secretary Treasurer Ryan Hung. Are you there, Ryan?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Yeah, so in your package today, there is a copy of the draft statement of financial information that many of us refer to as the SOFI. This is an annual report governed by the Financial Information Act. It provides transparency for compensation and expenses to some of our much used vendors that government and public sector entities need to report on. So for our report in particular this year, we're looking at the main schedules that will be of interest. Our Schedule 3, which is our schedule of remuneration and expense. And this is the one that provides the transparency for compensation for, you can see that the elected officials are separated from the staff. One thing I would like to comment on is that the threshold for this report is $75,000, and that number hasn't changed in many, many, many years. I believe the last amendment was back in 2002. I'm not sure if it was lower than that before then, but 75,000 has been around for a long time. And so what we're seeing now is that with salaries increasing with inflation over the many years, couple decades, this list has grown substantially in that time. So anyways, in this report, you can see the names are there, the positions are there, and the remuneration is included. The expense column also includes costs related to individuals if they travel within district. Also includes reimbursement for expenses that they would utilize for their daily work. One thing to mention here as well is that retirement payouts are included in the remuneration. So as you know, there's 3 ERIPs that would inflate some of the remuneration for teachers here, as well as support staff retirement allowances are paid out here as well. So moving on from Schedule 3, we look at Schedule 5. And this is for any of the vendors that we've paid $25,000 or more throughout the year. And again, this 25,000 has not been adjusted in a very long time. And so this list has grown as well. But yeah, like I said, this report is basically to provide transparency for the public.
Just a note, and just to add, thanks, Ryan. The other thing, it'll go to the board at the next regular board meeting for, I don't think it's approved, but anyways, it's
Steve.
submitted to the board because it is a legislated requirement. Once the board receives it, then it'll get sent off to the ministry, and they have a site online that is collecting all the school districts, SOFI reports, as well as all the other governmental agencies. Municipalities file this report, universities, health authorities, colleges. We all file this report in a like manner, and it is there is a central repository of it on the government site for public viewing, as it were.
I don't, Carol, your mic's not on, so.
I'm not sure. Carol froze her. Okay.
You must have read my lips because I was talking to you, Matt.
I just was curious. I know Ryan mentioned about the 75,000 threshold. Is that, who do you advocate for to increase that amount? Is it the
Government.
ministry? Is it
Government.
MLA?
Treasury.
Government itself.
Government
Treasury
itself?
board,
And
probably.
you can see, sorry, and just within the management report, you can see that it's governed by an act, as it were, the Financial Information Act. And so it truly is a legislated requirement. The thresholds are mandated by statute. So it really becomes, and I think that's often why they haven't changed on this. Why it hasn't moved very fast, again, probably 30 years on. In my career, it's always been the same because it is a legislative requirement, and I'm pretty sure that this is not a priority for them. But it is government that you would probably channel this to, maybe the Minister of Finance.
Okay, thanks.
Trustee Austin.
Brian, I was just going to say, I encourage people when it does go up on the government website, the different SOFI reports from all the different school districts. It is interesting reading. I often go and look at other school districts. I look at similar size school districts to ours. I look at the large ones. I look at smaller ones and the same size as ours. Just, to touch base with how, what their salaries look like with their staff, and it can make for good reading and interesting reading, and it also helps to address some questions you might have swirling around in the back of your head. So when that information does go up, well, you can look at previous reports. That gives you an idea, and then when the new SOFI reports go up, I also encourage you to look at them. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Seeing no more hands. Future topics. 2025-2026 amended budget will be coming forward. And the Q2 financial summary is also one of our next future topics. The next meeting for Finance and Operations is Tuesday, January 20th at 10:30 a.m. and it's via video conferencing. So I'd like to thank everybody that attended the meeting, and you get a few minutes.
Policy is next, just to get an
Oh.
advertisement in.
Oh, sorry. 1 o'clock is
1 o'clock.
policy. Everybody come on back. But for those of you that don't have to, it was nice seeing you. And yeah, we'll see you at 1 o'clock. This meeting's adjourned.
See you later, Grandma.
Bye. See you in an hour.